Been waiting for this for a really long time. This Friday, there's a pretty big sporting event going on, and look, why don't we just drop talking about rugby league right now and talk about the cricket, guys? Let's talk about the Ashes. Actually, would you guys even be interested in talking about like doing a watch along or even a live stream this Friday night? What do you guys reckon? Gee, bloody. Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Welcome back to the Wobble and Draw Sports channel. If you're new around here, hope I can get you to consider liking the content and subscribing to the channel. But if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. The first live stream in a month, and I couldn't think of a better, bigger way to come back onto the live stream after I've shot that dodo bird and fixed out me internet connections. Fair freaking dinkum. Things are going to go smooth and fast tonight. And I am so grateful and humbled to be joined by the Big Cat Chat podcast, Jack and Natalie. Ladies first, Natalie, it is so good to have you back on. How are you?
I am excellent, Sam. Thank you for having me. It's always a good time.
Yes, it is. And Jack, how the hell are you, buddy?
I'm all right, thank you, mate. I've been a little sick, but you know what? This Panthers winning streak is keeping me going.
Yeah, well, Jack, listen, a month ago, maybe 2 months ago now, we were supposed to do a live stream, and you fell sick then, and I'm really grateful that you didn't, drop dead on me about 10 minutes ago, sort of thing. But I don't hold grudges or anything like that, so let's just move on. As a matter of fact, let's talk about the last time these two clubs met. It was the Cowboys that smashed the Penrith Panthers. Jack and Natalie, the Cowboys were full strength. The Panthers had no excuses. It's not like that they were working at half strength. Natalie, I mean, fair dinkum, you guys were the bloody minor premiers a month out, and we still got yous, eh?
Oh, I was actually proud of them that game. I didn't go as badly as I thought it was going to, which is saying something.
Jack, what happened to the Panthers that night? I thought you guys were the bomb.
Well, Mitch Kenny was captain, but no one else in the team really stood up to his level that night, unfortunately.
Honest to goodness, though, for a matchup that featured pretty much or was full strength, except for Tom Dearden, who unfortunately hurt his nether regions the week before. And then you had Penrith Panthers, yes. And then you had the Penrith Panthers who were working at half strength. Boy, howdy, North Queensland had to work for that victory. I don't think that scoreline in the end actually reflected how tough the game actually was. So just before we go on any further, thank you to the viewers. Thank you to everybody that's tuning in live right now, trickling in as we go on, or you might catch us on the replay. Links to social media descriptions will be posted in the description box below at the conclusion of this live stream to the Big Cat Chat podcast. Go and check them out. They will be in the link. In links in the description box below. Jack, starting with you, man. You guys know that I've got a soft spot for Penrith, and mid-season review, please, if you would, Jack. How do you make of your reign in 2023 thus far?
It's a funny one because obviously it's weird to say that we're not at the level we were at despite being first. Of course, the buys have helped us out in that regard, where we're level on points with the Broncos, even though they've had none. It's been an interesting one. We're doing slightly better than I thought we would. I'll be completely honest. I think it's taken a little bit of adjustment with some of the losses we've had to start the season. Taking a few weeks for combinations to click and everything like that. I still don't think the attack is firing as it has been in previous seasons. But one thing that I've been really impressed with is the defense has still been brilliant. It's the best in the comp. Whenever we've lost games, we've still been in them right at the end of the game. So at least you can see the hunger is still there, which I think was a big question mark for many people, given what the club has been through. So I'm satisfied. I'd give it a pass mark. I'd say they've slightly exceeded my expectations.
That tried and true bloody formula, the defense is still sticking strong.
Yeah.
And Natalie, I really want to hear your mid-season review as well, but to also add on a question to you too. Ivan Cleary, your coach, he's had to deal with assistant coaches going on to bigger, greater things. I think Cameron Ciraldo is doing a pretty honourable job at the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, and Andrew Webster is kicking all sorts of backside over the ditch. How do you? I'd like to ask your mid-season review, and also if you could dive into Ivan Cleary. Do you think he's made a couple of changes or a couple of roster executions that maybe you disagree with or agree with? What do you reckon about Ivan Cleary?
Yeah, like in terms of a mid-season review, I'm actually stoked at where we are, especially the way we started. Like we're at one stage where I think we'd lost more games than we'd won, which is a very foreign concept for the past couple of years. And for me to have for him to bounce back, and we're forgetting that it's 3.5 years now, the 4th year running, they've kept this really high standard for themselves, which is just incredible. Like I've never seen it before. So I think I'm really impressed with where they're at, and especially the way they were able to get themselves out of that right after we lost to the Tigers, and have just come back and really smashed it out since then. In terms of Ivan, like I'm obsessed with him as a coach, and I think the fact that we've lost those assistant coaches and we are still where we are just shows how much he is the integral part of our team. Some of his selections I was not thrilled with at the time, like Peachy. I'm not thrilled with him, and Salmon constantly being there, but it's working. We are kind of enjoying the way he's using Mitch Kenny a little bit more. That's kind of settling in a bit more, I think. Whereas at the beginning of the year, it's a bit, how are you going? But we do have faith in him, even though sometimes we don't know why he's picking an old 34-year-old in centres instead of someone who could be like waiting to be the next big thing. But that's okay. We have faith.
And just quickly on Mitch Kenny as well, I read a stat today, I think it was on NRL.com, that Penrith Panthers are running maybe second last when it comes to darts out of dummy half, or just meters out of dummy half. Jackman, Mitch Kenny, you are president, no disrespect to that, maybe co-presidents of the Mitch Kenny fan club. So Mitch Kenny, does that surprise you that the Panthers are down in about second last for darts out of dummy half, or meters or runs out of dummy half, is considering you know Mitch Kenny's game so well?
Well, I'd just like to start by saying that you calling us the president and co-president of the Mitch Kenny fan club, I know that will absolutely grind the gears of Benno and Angus, who started the club. And so I'm very happy you've done that, because anything that annoys them is great with me. I'm not surprised at that stat, to be honest. I remember the Canberra game a few months ago when we put 50 on them in their own backyard, and Jamin Salmon scored the 50-point try. It's yelled, "We got a dog." What an iconic moment. Mitch Kenny had 0 run meters in that game. And it doesn't surprise me at all, because that's just not what he's about. And while, everyone would love to see, someone darting out in the way that like Damien Cook or Appy Coruscant or even Sonny Luke does, I'm glad that he's not trying to be something that he's not. And, he gives more than admirable service. I'd say excellent service, actually, from dummy half. And he's a fantastic defender. And when he does run the ball, it's usually when he moves into that middle forward role. And he's excellent at that. So I'm just happy that they haven't, thrown out the game plan with whatever they had planned for Mitch, because it wasn't quite working the first few weeks. And I'm glad that everyone kept their cool and just stuck to the process. And I think we're seeing the rewards for that now. And obviously it would be lovely to see Mitch, run out a bit more, do a bit more variety in his game, and ask a few more questions of the opposition, because the one downside to it is that you kind of know what he's going to do automatically.
Yes.
But hey, for all we know, he's saving it for grand final day.
There's that little bit of confidence coming back out, bro.
Oh, the arrogance. The arrogance has never left.
The old arrogance. And Natalie, so we've just touched on Mitch Kenny, and I was gonna ask you as well. So after the end of round one, I guess everyone had you guys lined up to ask you the question. So you're missing Viliami Kikau now. You're missing Api Coruscant now. With Mitch Kenny, while you aren't darting out a dummy half as much, you guys are still scoring 53 points. You're still smashing the Sydney Roosters this past weekend as well.
Yeah.
You've also got the victory. Oh, who was it? Against the Manly Seagulls 4 or 5 weeks ago. So your attack, while it is maybe... I mean, you've never been famous for your attack, but it's been your defense. So, Api Coruscant and Viliami Kikau, I think Jack mentioned it just a minute ago. But Kikau and Coruscant, you think those holes have been filled, mate?
Kikau, I think I was saying on the weekend, I feel like we miss Kikau more than anybody. Just having him used to, like, that left edge was just lethal with him there. And I think we miss, as much as the replacements had been good, we miss that player who just seems to share a brain with Luai and that left edge, and he just pops up exactly where he needs to. So I think we really miss him. And we haven't had to watch him at the Bulldogs, which has been disappointing because he got injured. So I would have loved to have seen how he went there, but it's very difficult right now. Yeah. But I do think we miss him. Obviously, we miss Api as well, but I think Kikau left a bigger hole for us.
Yeah, but you see, you've got Scott Sorensen, who had his man of the match performance against the Roosters, and he had a pretty honourable performance as well. So I think Scott Sorensen's going well. Zach Hosking as well on the other edge as well. I think he's the bloke that filled up, but correct me if I'm wrong, but Zach Hosking's going well too. So, but Mitch Kenny and Sonny Luke, they're having wondrous seasons as well. So Penrith Panthers, while people are saying that their attack is not that good and they had a slow start, they're still on top of the ladder, man, pretty much, or second on the ladder. And that defense is still absolutely elite. Fair dinkum. Now let's get stuck straight into what we're here to talk about this evening, guys. This Friday night, I am so fascinated by this contest. In my opinion, guys, I think this is absolutely the game of the round. It's the Cowboys hosting the Panthers. And on tab.com.au, the Cowboys are $2.30 outsiders. Wow. And the Panthers are $1.62 favourites. And what I'll do, I'll go off through the Cowboys team list first, and then I'll get you guys to go into the Panthers team list. And so at fullback is Drinkwater. Felt and Valame are our wingers this Friday night. Leibutt and Hiku are our centres. Dearden and Townsend. Dearden, massive inclusion in at 5'8". McLean, Granville and Hess, front rowers. Leilua, Lukey. Oh, and that man, Mr. Taumalolo, is returning this Friday night in the lock position. Sam McIntyre makes his club debut as Cowboy 313 in jersey 14 off the bench. Griffin Neem, Tanoa Brown, and Kulikefu Fenefuiaki is jersey 17, and 18th man is Brendan Elliott. Jack, can you please take us 1 through to 13, please, mate, of the Penrith Panthers lineup?
Okay, so at fullback, we have the great Dylan Edwards, captain this weekend, by the way. The wingers are Sunia Taruva and Tom Jenkins gets another run. Centers are Isaac Tungor, and coming back into the team for Stephen Crichton is Tyrone Peachy. Our 5'8" is the wheat-gutted dog himself, Jamin Salmon, and at halfback is Nathan Jr., Jack Cogger. The props are Moses Leota and James Fisher-Harris. The hooker is the great Mitch Kenny. The second row is Hot Scott Sorensen and Zach Hosking. And the lock is Matt Eisenhuth.
And Natalie, can you take us through the rest of the team list, please?
Yep. So our interchange is Sonny Luke, Lindsay Smith, Spencer Leniu, unlucky to miss out on New South Wales selection, but we'll keep him for ourselves. Luke Garner, and then Jack Cole is our 18th man.
I am really grateful that we're able to speak about this game in the way that at his fallen during State of Origin time. We get to see a couple of new young faces coming in. And Natalie, what is your reaction to this team list? And specifically, or both of your opinions on this, Stephen Crichton will be gone because he is 18th man for New South Wales. What's your opinion on the team list, and what's your reaction to, well, Stephen Crichton will not be playing because he will be 18th man for the Blues next Wednesday night?
I would personally prefer for us to go with a younger approach, maybe debuting a few people rather than sticking with Peachy in the centres and then Salmon in 5'8" is not the most thrilling thing I've ever seen in my life. I understand why, but I personally would have loved to have seen Jenkins debut in the centres or just throw someone a debut. It's been a while since we've done that, and it usually does work out when we do debut these kids. So I guess I was disappointed not to see that this week. We never know; there might be some changes made, but I was disappointed to see that. So yeah, like it's okay, but I'm not thrilled with it.
Yo, well, wow. Jack, do you share the same opinion?
Yes, I believe it's a little bit conservative for what I'd like. The thing is, we know that they're going to do a job and they're going to be fine. But as Penrith fans, we're addicted to first grade debuts. We can't get enough of them. We want them every week. So I would have loved to have seen, maybe Jesse McLean on the wing and Tom Jenkins at centre instead of Tyrone Peachy. And I would have loved Jack Cole at 5'8". He is the next Matt Burton. So
turn it up. Really?
Yeah, he is. He's fantastic. He is electric. He's got a great kick. He can play 5'8" or centre. Just the parallels are all there. I would love to have seen him get a run. Who knows? He still may, but at least we know that it's a dependable team that's been picked.
Yeah.
They're not going to lose us a game.
Forgive my ignorance, Jack. Kurt Falls, mate, is he injured at the moment?
I believe he's not in the top 30 this season. So he was out of contract last year and he got re-signed on a second tier deal, I believe. Yep. So I actually don't think he's eligible until June 30.
Oh, strike me pink again. Forgive me ignorance, because he was thereabouts last year a handful of times. So I was sort of anticipating, but I should have been more well researched. Yes.
Well, it's a bit of a strange one because he's still there, so you'd assume he was still in it, and it's a bit odd. I guess he was happy to fulfill that role because you'd think he would have gotten at least a roster spot at another club, but.
Yeah. And now, look, you mentioned the word dependable, and Natalie, I've got to start incorporating me North Queensland Cowboy chat onto you now. The most dependable part about Penrith that I see in that team list is undoubtedly your huge forward pack. And thank goodness for the timing of Jason Taumalolo returning in the lock position. It is a massive inclusion for us. Is there anything that you may have done differently in that forward pack? I know Matt Eisenhuth has been pretty reliable.
Yeah, he's been okay, to be honest. I probably would have stuck with the forward pack, because I actually dare say Eisenhuth has been quite good this year. Whereas in the past, he's maybe been a bit of a plotter and it's been a bit like, oh, here we go again. But I actually think he's been quite decent. And I'm very interested to see how Taumalolo is coming back. It's going to be very interesting. Dearden coming back as well. It's like a very good game for the Cowboys to have these returns. But I actually agree with the forward pack that Ivan's trotted out.
What do you reckon about our forward pack? So I'll just pop her up again. McLean, Granville, Hess, Leilua, Lukey, and Taumalolo. To be perfectly honest with you, I think Jeremiah Nene got hit up the backside by a rainbow to be selected in State of Origin next Wednesday night, to be perfectly frank with you. I love what he did in his return game last weekend. But what do you make of the Cowboys team list? Both of you, starting with you, Nat.
Yeah, I think it looks really good. Like, I really do think it looks good. And I think they've been so rocks and diamonds this year, the Cowboys. You really don't know what you're going to get. But coming off that bye only must be helpful for them to have these players coming back. They're all fresh from the bye. And you really think they'll come out firing.
Oh, you freaking hope so anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, your Tigers 66-18, and then you smash the Storm 45-20. I'm hanging on for dear freaking life here at the moment. Jack, what's your reaction to the Cowboys team list this weekend, man?
It honestly, it looks pretty good. I'm looking at it going, I know that there's 4 players missing due to Origin, but it almost doesn't feel like a team that's that affected. It looks pretty strong. I think recruiting a player like Semi Valame really helps. He's very good. Like you said, Jeremiah Nano, I think was pretty lucky to be selected because I don't think it affects the Cowboys that much. I think Lukey has actually had a fantastic season and has been the better out of the two of them as this season's gone on. And God, it helps to have Lolo back. Plus, that front row, missing Ruben Cotter, but McLean and Hess are more than serviceable players. They get into most teams. So.
Kyle Felt was named as 18th man. Well, not technically so. He was named in jersey number 2. And then against the Melbourne Storm, Todd Payten said, actually, we're going to sit you out because we've seen your defensive deficiencies over the past, pretty much the entire year, just quietly. I thought that was a really brave and ballsy call by Todd Payten. And that's sort of the same stuff that we saw, say, for example, when Todd Payten called out Taumalolo when we took on the Penrith Panthers in round 1, 2021. So Kyle Felt, a bit of redemption, and he comes back and he's lining up against Sunia Turuva. And Natalie, Sunia Turuva, holy crap. Like, he had a really good couple of games last year. But is he just one of the great young meter eaters of the game today? He just gets into his work harder than most.
He really does, and he seems just really proud to get out there and just do the work. Him and Dylan are just two powerhouses at the back, and Brian. We don't have Brian this game, but the three of them at the back are just next level. Like, they compete with each other in terms of who's going to make the most meters every week, and it's just, they really kill it. So Turuva's just been so special this year. He's very, very rarely has a mistake in him, and I think he's having a phenomenal season.
Now, Jack, look, I'm going to talk to you about Dylan Edwards, because if I talk to Natalie about Dylan Edwards, I mean, it'll be a runaway locomotive, won't it? Right?
Yeah.
No, but Dylan Edwards, again, like another super high, super consistent season. I think maybe more damaging last year. That's just off the top of the dome, but still no less like greater. Like, he was just being fantastic this year. And the key matchup in this one is Scott Drinkwater versus Dylan Edwards, Jack.
Yeah, it's going to be very good. They're two, I'd say, very different players as well, which is what makes it interesting to me. Very different styles, where I'd say Drinkwater is more that sort of just rapid player who can just explode onto a ball and maybe score a 100-meter try, where Edwards is more the kind of player to maybe break through 4 tackles on his way to score a try. It's very interesting because I think both of those players have really proved a lot of doubters wrong, I would say, over the past 2 seasons, where they've shown that if they need to be, they will be match winners for their team. And they're not necessarily always required to every week, like certain fullbacks are at other clubs. So maybe there's less attention on them, but they can certainly pop up when the moments are required. So I think that's probably the strongest matchup in this game.
That's a fair statement, and it's going to be interesting because, to add on to that, Dylan Edwards, Sunia Turuva, they're going to, that you would probably say they are the better meter eaters in comparison. But I mean, Kyle Felt, before he was quote unquote hooked a fortnight ago, Kyle Felt, he still has his running meters up. He still has a lot of hit ups for a winger, definitely. So we'll need him to combat Dylan Edwards' kick return meters, for example. He'll need to be that, because Scott Drinkwater isn't that. He isn't that man to bring more kick return meters than a Dylan Edwards. And that's where Kyle Felt, and even big Semi Valame, new recruit from the Canberra Raiders, mid-season recruit, who impressed on his club debut big time. He did miss a crucial tackle that led to a Melbourne Storm try late in that first half. But then the message came out that Todd Payten said, right, you, and one of the men being Semi Valame, right, you need to start arcing up and you need to start giving us some more running meters coming out of our own half. And Semi Valame, in his very first touch, ran for 15 meters straight into the Melbourne Storm forward pack, who were just about at full strength. So Semi Valame and Kyle Felt versus pretty much Dylan Edwards and Sunia Turuva is going to be massive, even though Semi Valame and Sunia Turuva are not combating each other. Nat, who is combating each other, and I need to be correct about this. It is Semi Valame on Tom Jenkins, and it also is Tyrone Peachy versus Zach Laybutt. And before I get your opinion on that matchup, Zach Laybutt has been a captain of the reserve grade team at Cowboys, the Townsville Blackhawks. He led the under 21s to a comp. He led the Townsville Blackhawks to a comp last year as well, under 21s being a couple of years ago as well. And his debut, Zach Laybutt, against Parramatta about 3 weeks ago was highly impressive. Not overly surprising just because I've got my finger on the pulse sort of thing, but he was very, very good on club debut, and so too was Robert Derby just quietly. But Sammy Valame and Zach Laybutt versus Tyrone Peachy and Tom Jenkins. You've already made your feelings known about Tyrone Peachy, Nat, but what do you reckon about that edge matchup?
I'm excited for Jenkins. I'm really keen to see how he goes. But it's going to be a real, you're right about Laybutt. He's been amazing, and Valame has been amazing too for the Cowboys. So I think it'd be very interesting to see how they go. I'm most worried about Tyrone out of those 4 players. But I really do think it's going to be an excellent matchup there. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing how that goes.
Yes, and the forward pack, Jack, it is going to be McLean and Hess versus Moses Leota and James Fisher-Harris. And I'm just going to make a quick mention as well that Moses Leota almost scored in the first 5 minutes of that game against the Roosters. I think he made like a break, and you guys picked it on your Big Cat Chad podcast on your most recent one, and he got so freaking close. You guys nearly picked it. Couldn't believe it. But McLean and Hess versus James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota. Look, they've won the premiership back-to-back, right? So you do naturally give the edge there to James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota with all respect. But they've had the bye in Hess and McLean. They've got a huge challenge ahead of them in front of them with Moses Leota and James Fisher-Harris.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the biggest front row challenge you can get in the NRL this season. Possibly the Broncos as well. But it's certainly, McLean and Hess, they're no mugs. Like, those are 2 very, very big humans. And I would say the biggest issue for those 2 over the past few years has maybe been a little bit of consistency. But when they're on, it's almost impossible to stop the Cowboys. So from a selfish point of view, I hope they have stinkers. But it will be a really good game if all 4 of them are firing, because Fisher-Harris, we were talking about his defense at the game, weren't we, Nat? That he hits and doesn't bounce off a player. No matter how hard he hits him or what part of his body he hits him with, he sticks to him and brings him to the ground. Although I believe I said that one tackle before he missed a tackle on Luke Keary.
Always the way.
And then Moses Leota has just become one of the absolute wrecking balls of the competition with the ball in hand.
So good.
So it's really going to be interesting. I think someone like Cohen Hess needs to be up for it, I reckon. I think sometimes we've seen that he kind of thinks that defense is optional. But I think he's definitely improved in that regard since he's made that move in his career into the middle of the field, where he kind of can't afford to miss those tackles because he's got blokes his size running at him for once. It's definitely going to be an interesting matchup. I think if the Cowboys are to win this game, those 2 need to really be at their best, because when we've seen their best, it's been very, very good.
I agree. They can't be bullied this Friday night for sure, man. And where I do give the edge to the starting front row is for the Penrith Panthers. I do give the edge just creatively now for the North Queensland Cowboys. Drinkwater, Chad Townsend, and Dearden up against Salmon, Cogger, and Dylan Edwards. Mind you, Dylan Edwards has been throwing some severe cutout passes that are going like a blink of an eye. Like his passing game is getting a little bit better week in and week, just quietly. So I do give the creative edge actually to Chad and Tom Dearden and Nat, Stephen Crichton being left out. I sort of know how that feels because Tom Dearden was sitting on the bench for 18th man for Queensland, and Cowboys had to play Parramatta without him. So I sort of sympathise, I empathise with losing someone, and they're not going to be played as 18th man. What is your? My question is, what is your reaction to? I think I am. It is presumptuous of me. I am just guessing, but I reckon Todd Payton has gotten into Billy Slater's ear. I think Billy Slater has gone, right. You potentially could be playing 2 games without Tom Dearden as 18th man, who may not even come on, and you might lose a game because you didn't have him playing at 5'8". I think, with all due respect to Parramatta Eels fans, of course, I think if Tom Dearden played, go a little bit closer to bloody winning that game. What do you think about Stephen Crichton being 18th man and Tom Dearden now coming back in? And do you think Todd Payton might have actually made the call, Nat?
I mean, potentially. I don't know if he would have that power, but he could have influenced or just, I guess, mentioned it. It's annoying to not have them, especially given they won't be playing. But at the same time, the way I see all of these challenges is just as that a challenge. So it's going to get us used to, if Crichton goes down throughout the year or if he goes down in the finals or something like that, it's always good practice to see who's the next man up. So I just try and look at it as a positive and think, let's see what we've got in store if he goes down at any point. And I see the same thing in respect to Nathan Mears' injury. It's a really good time for us to test our depth.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as you said before, you're not seeing enough of that young crop coming through this Friday night. And I'm sort of with you as well. Like, I was hoping to see maybe just 1 or 2 other faces as well in that Penrith lineup. And so just quickly, I'll also finalise who the other matchups are. Scott Sorensen is going to be running at Highland Lukey this Friday night. That's going to be a great matchup. But if Jack Cogger can be switched on enough, that right edge defensively for the North Queensland Cowboys is just about being the worst in the comp, and Scott Sorensen can run a fine line and he can score a try as well. So Scott Sorensen is going to be really dangerous this Friday night if his halves partners are going to be well switched on. And then on the other side of the paddock is going to be Zach Hosking versus Leilua, and I do give the edge to Leilua in that instance. So probably Sorensen on one edge just because of experience, and then on the other side as well is Luciano Leilua. So I think that balances out perfectly. Jason Taumalolo returning for the first time in 6 weeks again. It can't be understated. I don't care if I repeat myself way too many times, man. Like, Taumalolo back this weekend is huge. Is absolutely enormous for us this weekend. And then you look at the interchange benches as well, just quietly. So you've got Sam McIntyre, who can play at hooker or might even be a substitute for Jason Taumalolo. Neem is going to have to combat Spencer Leniu this weekend. I'm selecting Griffin Neem to be the man that has to hit Spencer Leniu with everything he's got, because Spencer Leniu is going to have to, I don't know, unleash a little bit of his venom after what happened to him this past Saturday night. Freaking dinkum. Spencer Leniu, absolute champion of a player. Luke Garner returns, Lindsay Smith and Sonny Luke off the interchange bench. I do think in the end, while they're different body shapes, I do think that the interchanges are relatively even. Would you agree with that, Jack? Or do you reckon Cowboys or Panthers are a little bit better than the other?
I think they're very similar. I think Penrith's advantage would be maybe a bit more experience, but I'd say in particular Griffin Neem and Jermaine Tanoa-Brown, those 2 players aren't scared of anything. If I remember correctly, Tanoa-Brown himself had a little bit of an incident with Jared Warrior-Hargreaves at Magic Round.
Yes, sir.
Where they were mouthing off to each other, and he didn't back down at all. Probably kept his cool a little bit better than what Spencer did doing it. But, those 2 are just energy machines off the bench for the Cowboys. And I think it's definitely what you need with this Cowboys forward pack, who are all skillful, very good players. But someone like Taumalolo has been out for 6 weeks. We know that he's an absolute monster of an engine, but Todd Payton is very wary not to run him into the ground like, used to happen early in his career. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how these 2 benches are used. We've brought Luke Garner back onto our bench for the first time since like round 4, I think.
Yeah.
And really interested to see what happens there, whether he comes on as a straight swap for someone like a Sorensen, or whether Sorensen moves into the middle as he used to do in his previous role with Penrith. Lindsay Smith and Spencer Leniu, pretty good players to come on. Spencer Leniu,
I like the work
superstar.
I like the work of Lindsay Smith this year, man.
He is such an underrated part of our team, I think. Like the fact that he has come into our squad and like no one has even really talked about it because he hasn't looked out of place at all, you know?
Yep.
And
Yep.
he's not being a superstar, but we don't need him to do that. I remember, I think it was his first game of the season, the Canberra game, where he made 2 massive effort plays. One of them was to make a tackle on a Canberra player just in front of the try line to stop a try. And then another one was chasing down a grubber, which he caught and then gave it to Nathan Cleary to score next to the post. And you can just see there that those are 2 absolute effort plays and energy plays that's what you need from your bench forwards. You don't want them to come on and just coast. You want them to bring it to the other team.
Yep.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Sonny Luke is used. I know Nat and I have both, over the past couple of weeks, had slightly negative thoughts on the way he settled into first grade. You know, it's going to take him time, and I think we're starting to see that. You know, sometimes we think he's a bit, I think he's a bit happy to just go for a dummy half scoot a bit too often near the try line and maybe waste a tackle, or he can be a bit of a liability in defense, which we've seen. So that'd be very interesting because if someone like Taumalolo targets Sonny Luke, I know how that's going to end up.
Yeah.
Sonny Luke's going to be picking grass out of his teeth pretty much. So it's going to be very interesting to me to see how that side of Penrith interchange is used. We've seen massive differences in the minutes that he's played this year, depending on the game. And I have absolutely no idea like whether he's going to play 2 minutes or 60 minutes this weekend. I couldn't tell you at all.
Yeah. I got to agree as well. I'll just add on to it too. I'm a little bit disappointed, like that Sonny Luke hasn't quite kicked on because he was so good for Tonga in that World Cup as well. So yeah, I was hoping to see a little bit more of Sonny Luke, but we are only halfway through the season anyway. Let's get stuck into the tip now. I genuinely, just to wrap things up on this game, because Jack and Nat will be, to the viewer, will be joining me to preview the rest of the round, gratefully. This is a fascinating game. I truly do believe that this is the game of the round. My bias eyes are gonna get the better of me, obviously, and I think the Cowboys, man, I think this would be a huge victory for them. In particularly, we're still 2 wins outside of the 8 with a bastard of a 4 and against as well. So Cowboys, I think they can win, and I think if they do, it'll be a scoreline of 20 points to 18. I think we're in for a thriller this Friday night. Natalie, starting with you, what do you reckon about this contest?
Yeah, look, I have a weird feeling we're going to win. I don't know why, but maybe I'm in a false sense of security from the past couple of weeks. But I think it might be more along the lines of maybe 22 points to 8. That's my.
Oh,
jeez! We're not letting in 18 points in the weekend.
Jesus. Okay, Penrith 13 plus. Thank you, Nat. You'll never be on again. No, I'm joking. Jack, what about you, mate? What do you reckon about this Friday night?
Well, Nat and I last week when we were recorded highlighted this as a game that we think we should win, but in this run of games that we're going to have without Nathan Cleary, it's one of the danger games. It's just a tricky one. Never know what we're going to get out of any of these games, especially with the way that these 2 teams have played this year. Like, it's impossible, especially the Cowboys. It's impossible to predict what's going to happen when you concede 66 to the West Tigers one week and then score 45 against the Melbourne Storm the next week. Like, what's going on there? And especially a Melbourne Storm that went on to score 60 points the week after that too. So who knows what's going on? I think that Penrith will win. But I think it's going to be like one of those style wins that we saw at the beginning of the season where perhaps Penrith win like 14-10 or something like that. One thing I'm definitely going to predict is that Tom Dearden is going to set up a try on that edge because he's going to target that gap there between Jack Cogger and Zach Hosking. I think that's one that you could possibly get at because it's still a combination that's building, because Zach Hosking didn't play last week given he was hurt. So that's still one that we haven't quite seen how it's going to work. And we just know that Tom Dearden's a fantastic player who can put a back rower through a gap near a try line. We saw it in Origin 3 last year, unfortunately for me. I think North Queensland score at least 2 tries, but I can see Penrith just scraping it because Penrith is still conceding only 11 points a game, which is 52% better than the next best defensive team, which is 17 points a game. So I've still got faith in us in that regard because I think our defense will still hold up. I just think it's our attack, which is the issue.
Yeah, definitely. Look, Salmon and Cogger, they've done their good things over the past little while as well. But yeah, I think it is the defense of the Panthers versus the creativity. I think that is a little bit more prevalent in the North Queensland Cowboys this Friday night. I'm so excited to actually fair dinkum and watch it. Now let's go into the rest of the round now, and starting on Saturday, we've got the Knights versus the Roosters. It's Saturday, 3 p.m. And on tab.com.au, Knights are $1.52 favourites. The Roosters are $2.55 outsiders. And the Roosters, I think they all but confirmed I think they are that close to being officially penciled out for the rest of the season. And just before I get to you, Natalie, I got to give you your credit. Before a ball was even kicked, I think it was back in freaking January that you said the Roosters are going to be frauds this year. So, and I think you were the first person that I saw that actually put that opinion out there. So I say bravo to you. I genuinely do, genuinely. We're all applauding Roosters' misery.
Shame.
But no, seriously, Nat, you bloody picked it from the freaking start of the season before a ball was kicked. Knights versus Roosters, what do you reckon is going to happen this weekend?
I think it'll be a huge Knights win. We have Kalen Ponga at the Knights. We saw what happened last time Kalen Ponga played during Origin. They won convincingly. He is looking pretty good at the moment. Not to mention the Roosters are out without Tedesco, which, if I'm being honest, I'm not sure is a good or bad thing at the moment because he just seems to be stifling their attack as well. But I really think the Roosters look absolutely rudderless in attack. Their defense is pretty terrible as well. I don't see how they turn that around at this stage, let alone in 1 week. It's at Newcastle's home ground. I think it's a clear Newcastle win.
True, dude. And Jack, what do you reckon?
It's not very often I say this, but go the Knights. I think they are going to win by 20 points. I can see this stadium. It's going to 3 p.m. Saturday. It's going to be packed out with a bunch of absolutely batshit insane Knights supporters who are going to make life a living hell for the Roosters for 2 hours. You know, they've gone from one fullback who refuses to pass in James Tedesco to another one who refuses to pass in Joseph Manu. They have a centre pairing of Corey Allen and Billy Smith, 2 players you can get at. Sandon Smith is at halfback for them. Hastings and Gamble definitely win that battle over Smith and Keary. Nat Butcher is going from playing on an edge all season to having to play prop in this game. Nafahu White is playing lock for them, he's a good player. I'm excited to see him get a run, but, there's not much else going on around him. I can see this being one of those classic games where the Knights get up in front of their home crowd and, Kalen Ponga 2 tries at least. And, this is going to be a bad day for the Roosters once again, which is a good day for rugby league.
Everybody else.
We can all agree.
Hell yeah. And I just Newcastle Knights, man. I don't like Adam O'Brien. I am on that side of the fence, but I've got to give him credit because I reckon for maybe half of this first half of 2023, the Knights have played some pretty powerful, fast, fun, attractive rugby league. And unfortunately, that's been missing for about a month up until last Saturday, where they took it to the Broncos in an amazing match. I thought that was an amazing effort from the Newcastle Knights and one of the games of the season, just quietly. So, yeah, I am with you guys, even though I don't know if you guys know this or not. Greg Marzu is not playing because the night after he missed the team bus, so he must have hit the Terps all night long in celebration. So coming in for him is an Aru Tuala. And for the Roosters, Sandon Smith and Kiri in the halves and Joseph Manu goes back to fullback. I do think the Knights win. I'm hesitant to say 13 plus, so I'll stick it with 1 to 12. I'll stay 1 to 12 because they did leak 26 against the Gold Coast Titans, even though the Roosters are batshit awful in attack at the moment. So let's go into the second game, and that is the Parramatta Eels versus the Manly Sea Eagles from CommBank. And on tab.com.au, Parramatta are $1.55 favourites. Manly are $2.45 outsiders. And Natalie, I know that, and if people don't know, you will now, Natalie is a super coach fanatic this season. And this game, I should bring up the actual team list, actually, if you don't mind, in 3, 2, 1. For super coach tips for Parramatta versus Manly, with Ryan Madison in at 5'8" for Eels, Schuster and Jacob Arthur in the halves pairing up against his old club. What super coach tip, Natalie? Like, please?
Oh, God, I'm not the person to ask anymore. Honestly, I started in the top 1%, and I dropped like 30,000 positions this week. So
she's entering Trent Robinson fraud territory.
I really am. I don't think I can keep pretending anymore. I just had a lucky first few rounds, so I'm at a loss as well. But I am excited for this game. I think it's going to be a really good one. For mine, besides our game, I think it's the second best game of the round. I think it's quite evenly matched up. We can both see that their halves have taken a bit of a hit, obviously. And I'm so excited to see how it works out. It's really hard for me to tip it, but I think I'm going to go Manly just.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think Schuster will have a bigger influence than what he did against the Newcastle Knights a couple of weeks ago. And Jacob Arthur, I think he's going to absolutely give it to the old fans, his old club. Absolutely. I'm so excited to see how Arthur goes this weekend. What do you reckon, Jack?
Jacob Arthur revenge game. I cannot wait for it. I actually think he's a fantastic player who was put in a pretty much impossible situation where he had to move. Now he can be freed up. He can do what he wants.
Yeah.
I think exactly. Like, I don't obviously missing, Tom Trbojevic and Daly Cherry Evans is pretty big for Manly, but it's not exactly as if Jacob Arthur and KO Weeks are bad players. They're both very strong ball runners, which I think will scare Parramatta, because even when Parramatta have all their players, they're another team where defense is optional for them. And I just can see this being one of those games where, I think Manly win, but it's definitely for me one of those games where it ends up like 34-30, that kind of thing.
Right.
Where there's 5 or 6 tries each or whatever, and it's decided in the last 2 minutes or whatever. Because Parramatta, they know how to score a try as well, but God, some of their defense, it confuses me. Like, genuinely confuses me how a team can be so good with the ball in hand, but just so horrendous without it.
I reckon there was a 5-10 minute period there in yesterday's game where the Bulldogs were well on top, and I said it in a Twitter post. You cut off the Bulldogs' legs yesterday and they play the way they did against the Roosters. They may not have won, but that scoreline isn't the way it looked yesterday. If the Bulldogs played more disciplined, I mean, we heard throughout the commentary that the Bulldogs are promoting a different style of attacking game plan. And if that's what the game plan was, to kick on second and third tackle 6 or 7 times in that first half, then throw it in the friggin' bin, because you played so much better against the Roosters. I'm going to give the edge to Manly, but I do want to note, though, that Wanga Blake and Sean Lane have been named on the reserves list in 21 and 22, so maybe a late inclusion of some good players there. But mind you, if a high bomb goes towards Wanga Blake, we know what Penrith Panthers did to him last season, don't we? All right, let's go into, quote-unquote, the main event on Super Saturday. That is the West Tigers hosting the Melbourne Storm from Campbelltown Stadium. The 3,000 people, I'm sure, will be really looking forward to this game. On tab.com.au, sorry, Tigers and Storm fans, Tigers are $2.90 outsiders, and the Storm are $1.42 favourites. Jack, how do you see this one going?
But Tigers, it's been fun the last few weeks. You ran up a big score on the Cowboys, had a bye, then a couple of close losses. Last week wasn't helped by the injuries mid-game, but it's over now. Melbourne Storm are going to do some bad things to this Tigers team, I think. The Tigers forward pack actually looks pretty decent. I'm not sure about John Bateman playing in the middle rather than an edge. I think it takes away from the best aspects of his game. But I just think he's had a good season, but if you're playing Stafford Toa at 5'8", then that raises more questions than answers for me. I can see this Melbourne backline, who love to score tries, just doing some bad things to the Tigers.
And just a couple of personnel mentions as well. So Brent Naden returns in the centres in jersey number 3 after a suspension, I think it was. I think it's his first game since Penrith, since the Tigers beat Penrith. I might be on about that.
Brilliant tackle.
Yes. And then the forward pack, interchange bench, Dallin De Silva making his debut. And then you look at the Melbourne Storm as well. Jonah Pezzett, who has absolutely impressed in his minimal touches in 2023. I'm with you, Jack. I am going to go the Melbourne Storm in this one, but I don't know. I think there's going to be a bit of a scare, probably at halftime, and then I think the Storm will run away with it. What do you reckon, Nat?
I agree. I think it will be the Storm's game to lose. I think it'll be pretty convincing. Not pretty Tigers fans. I think we're going to see a big Melbourne win. I think they're just getting into the swing of things.
Yep. All right, let's go into the last game, and that is the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks hosting the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs on tab.com.au. The Sharkies are $1.26 favourites. $3.90 are the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. And scrolling down to the team list that have been announced, I might be wrong, but on first glance, Natalie, the Sharks are unchanged. They're unchanged. That's pretty much it. God.
How are they unchanged from such a horrible week last week? Although saying that, I still back them to win this game. I think the Bulldogs have been looking pretty awful. They were horrible against Parramatta. And Nico Hines is going to have a huge point to prove after the Origin snubbing. So I think they bounce back, to be honest. Even though the team is disappointing, I think they bounce back, and I see them. I think they might win convincingly against the poor old Dogs.
Jack, mate, what do you reckon?
I'm actually gonna go with the Bulldogs here. I don't know why. I'm looking at this game going, all I can see is a lot of mid all over both teams here.
That's for sure. Yeah.
And I just think that both teams should have made a lot more changes. Well, Cronulla should have made at least some based on how they've played this previous round. And it's, neither team really have given me what I want to see. but I can see this being the type of game where some of these Bulldogs forwards go out there with a point to prove. I can see this being the kind of game where Tavita Pangai Jr. reminds us that he's a good player.
Yep.
And he absolutely tears holes through them. I reckon Jacob Preston is going to go out there and lead the way. Reed Marnie to make up for, he gets the yips when he versus Parramatta. And he's going to make up for that. I can see Matt Burton just absolutely terrorizing with his bombs. You know, they're bad enough in the first place, but when you put them down at Shark Park where it's always windy and weird shit happens, I can see that ball moving around all day, causing some absolute nightmares for this Cronulla backline. And I don't know. I'm probably going to be horrendously wrong here, but I just think the Bulldogs might get them here.
Look, they did take it to the Sharkies earlier on in the season. It was 13 plus, like literally 13 points was the margin last time they met. The Sharks are by and large full strength in this game. And even though the Bulldogs have copped a couple, they're still awaiting Thompson and Kickout to return, just to name just a couple. It is a pretty strong lineup, though. It is close-ish to being a full strength lineup. Look, if Sharkies lose this game, that the alarm bells are well and truly ringing. But I am going to be choosing the Cronulla Sharks to win this game, man. But I'll tell you what, it might not be the highest quality contest, just quietly, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think it's going to be optional viewing, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
I might watch Gilmore Girls instead.
Wow. Okay. No worries. Jack, Natalie, again, like we've got another blockbuster in waiting between the Cowboys and Panthers. It's 3 in a row, and I am so grateful for your time this evening. Thank you for being so gracious. So much fun. Is there anything coming up on the Big Cat Chat podcast, Jack, coming up over the next couple of weeks, or is there anything that you want to put out there?
Just our normal ramblings.
Yeah, we're not very good at planning stuff, to be honest.
Yeah.
we come up with it like 5 minutes before we record, and we go, "All right, that sounds good."
That sounds good. Yeah.
I can imagine, the heights we'd be at if we actually planned. We'd be like Hello Sport, maybe. But it's just the same old stuff. We've both been a bit unwell recently, so we had a little break from recording for a couple of weeks, but
we're back.
Feels like we're getting back into a groove.
Yeah.
Which is just fun. We just like chatting to each other about footy because we agree on everything. So
it's great.
Yeah.
That's to hear if you tune to
never an argument, basically. Yeah.
No, well, genuinely, I keep everybody that's tuning in live right now or catching the replay, please go and find them on Apple. Primarily, that's how I use them. Links will be in the description box below at the conclusion in the next couple of minutes anyway. Jack, Nat, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to be tagging you in a couple of Twitter posts this Friday night. And may the best team win this Friday. Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, mate.
Cool.
Thanks for having us on.
Absolute pleasure. Any freaking time. Have a very nice weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you later. Take care and adios.